Hello, this is TJR, and welcome to Album of the Week. If this is your first time, welcome. This is the weekly show where I recommend a new release album, provided, of course, there is a new release for the week that I can recommend. Last week's Album of the Week was World on the Ground by Sarah Jaros. This week's Album of the Week is Homegrown by Neil Young. But before we get started, if you like what I am doing, be sure to click like, click subscribe, and smash the bell notification icon so you can know when I release new videos. Homegrown is the 40th studio album by Neil Young, originally recorded between 1974 and 1975 and scheduled for a 1975 release, when it was pulled from release by the artist. In a recent press statement, Neil Young described the album as the sad side of a love affair, and that he delayed releasing it because of the heartache it gave him, stating, "I just couldn't listen to it. I wanted to move on. So I kept it to myself, hidden away in the vault on the shelf in the back of my mind." I listened to this album on vinyl, so I will review it as such. And unlike my typical Album of the Week videos, this review will be a track-by-track review. Side 1, Track 1, Separate Ways. When this album begins, there is something jarring and disorientating about how the band opens the song. The closest that I can come to describing it is to compare it to the feeling I get when I wake up from an unpleasant dream. Not a nightmare, but definitely unpleasant and frightening in a more existential way. Then Neil Young sings the opening lines, and there is something apocalyptic in his voice that reminds me of John Lennon at his darkest. This is a great way to start an album that was filled with so much heartbreak that Neil Young couldn't bring himself to release it back in 1975. Separate Ways is one of Homegrown's strongest tracks, and I'm glad that he opened with it. Track 2, Try. I remember thinking this song was good, not great, when I first heard it as an advanced track. Hearing it now in the context with the rest of the album has increased my appreciation for it. It's a warm, country-tinged ballad that is unabashedly earnest in its delivery. Not a great song, but still a really nice song. Track 3, Mexico. Neil Young's piano intro and his vocal melody are so filled with longing on this track. It's one of those rare tracks that feels like an old friend from the moment I first hear it. My only complaint with this track is that it ends too soon. Seriously, it really does feel like it's only half finished. Like it stopped after a verse and a half and said, "Okay, good enough." I guess I shouldn't complain too much because while it's plain, the world is a slightly more beautiful place for it. But I find myself wanting to get up and replay it immediately afterwards and imagine that there is at least one more verse to this song. Track 4, Love is a Rose. It's funny just how much the performance can sometimes change how you feel about a song. For a long time, I was not even aware that Neil Young had written this song. For a long time, my only knowledge of this song was a version recorded by Nana Mascori. Hopefully I've said that correctly. I like Neil Young's version much better. I think this song's biggest weakness is how easy it can become cheesy in the wrong hands. Neil Young's rustic approach allows this song to retain its earnestness and its innocence while completely avoiding the cheese. Track 5, Homegrown, the title track. The album loses some steam with this track, I'm afraid. Like Mexico, it feels not quite finished, but not because it's not long enough. Instead, it's the arrangement of the performance that feels unfinished. Perhaps more instruments should have joined in as the song progressed. Some piano, some fiddle, and perhaps an additional rowdy drunken chorus might have helped. I keep thinking of John Lennon's instructions to George Martin on how he envisioned being for the benefit of Mr. Kite when I listened to this song, when he told George Martin, "I want the listener to be able to smell the sawdust." Homegrown is loose and feels like it wants to be a bit dangerous. It feels like it wants you to smell the beer and feel like you are in the rough and rowdy bar that it's being performed in rather than the recording studio that it's actually being performed in. But it never quite gets there. Track 6, Florida. This track is a monologue with some homemade sound design in the background. I am honestly not sure what to make of this monologue. I don't know what I'm supposed to feel. I have heard similar strange audio meanderings like this by the Beatles and Beck, but the difference is that those dialogue-driven meanderings made me feel something. Maybe something scary or something funny. But Florida doesn't make me feel anything. This is my least favorite track on the album, and one that I will undoubtedly skip on future listenings. Track 7, Kansas. A beautiful, gentle acoustic ballad holding just a hint of mystery. Neil Young's harmonica, while not showing any amazing chops, is still wonderfully emotive and acts more as sound design than melody. But it works great within the context of the song. Neil Young's entire performance is so wonderfully understated on this song, and the level of gentleness to how he sometimes strums his acoustic guitar only adds to the delicate nature of the song. This track is a real beauty. That concludes Side 1. Side 2, Track 1. We Don't Smoke It No More. I love this dirty blues track. It feels like the successor to Bob Dylan's Rainy Day Woman No. 12 and 35. I guess I could stop there and say that's compliment enough. But I will also add that We Don't Smoke It No More does everything that I think Homegrown was trying to do. It really does make me smell the beer. It really does make me feel like I'm in that hot and sweaty bar, eyeing that one seemingly unattainable woman that I just can't stop thinking about. I especially love how Ben Keith's lap slide guitar sometimes feels like a swarm of bees getting a little too dangerously close. Track 2, White Line. Robbie Robertson complements some classic Neil Young guitar and harmonica interplay with his acoustic lead guitar on this track. So many of the songs on Homegrown feel like you are walking down a long and lonesome road with nothing on the horizon but melancholy, and White Line is no exception. Track 3, Vacancy. Okay, this is the album's strongest track. I was blown away by this one when I first heard it as an advanced track. This song is tough and spacey, and it compares to Cinnamon Girl and other Neil Young pre-grunge rock classics. Vacancy is a much-needed adrenal shot in the arm on what is mostly a quiet, introspective album, and its dark lyrics will have me pondering on each listen. Track 4, Little Wing. This track was later repurposed on the album Hawks and Doves. It's another one of those songs that showcases just how adept Neil Young can be at creating a sense of quiet mystery with just an acoustic guitar and harmonica. You're probably already familiar with this track. You already know it's a good track. Track 5, Star of Bethlehem. Another great song that shows just how traditional country Neil Young can sound. This one features background vocals from Emmylou Harris and would later get repurposed on the album American Stars and Bars that I already have, so I'm already familiar with this track. It's a solid track filled with quiet beauty. There's a lot of melancholy on Homegrown, a lot of quiet moments and quiet introspection. There are a few false starts as well, but otherwise I would describe it as a pretty solid, quiet album. Is it a masterpiece? Well, it's not Harvest, if that's what you are wondering. In the past, I have been guilty of calling out a new album that has excited me as a masterpiece. But at the end of the day, it is time that decides if an album is really a masterpiece or not. And right now, this album, while hidden for decades, is still too fresh to make that call yet. And I make this point because quiet albums, or mostly quiet albums like Homegrown, don't hit you as hard at first as a more dramatic album like Harvest will. But it is, for now at least, a good album, and one that I am glad that Neil Young finally decided to allow into the light of day. So have you heard this album yet? Do you plan on listening to it? And has this review influenced you to check it out? Leave a comment and let me know what you think. And what new release from this week should I talk about next week? Everybody take care. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. And I hope you all stay safe and healthy. Take care. Bye-bye.